Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More. And in today's video, I'd like to talk for a short little while about a house rule that I have been thinking about for a while now, and I spent a little bit more time theorizing about it today on my break at work. And I'm thinking it could be fun. I don't know if it's going to be a game-breaking house rule, certainly a game-changing one. We have a cat, all right? We no longer have a cat. But it will be one that would change how characters level up slightly and how they interact with each other as they level up. So, let's here he is. Everyone say hello to Mr. Stark. He decided to be on camera. Mwah. Handsome boy. Okay. So, now that's a picture. So what is this house rule that I'm telling you about? Simply put, the house rule is that a weapon's damage, when you roll damage for a weapon, you roll a number of damage dice equal to the level of the attacking character. I did not invent this. I first encountered this when reading a OSR by the name of Backswords and Bucklers, which I've talked about previously on this channel. And in that game, it only applied to ranged weapons. And I think the idea was to make pistols and muskets very deadly, especially with higher level characters, to kind of represent, that assassin or something like that. Sure, makes sense. But it got me thinking, a highly skilled swordsman in melee combat is just as deadly as a trained assassin. In fact, in many cases, they were the trained assassins of the Elizabethan period, as well as before and after that time period. But without getting into the woods of hit locations and piecemeal armor and all these other minutia of house rules, it's hard to show that in an OSR style game, or even in an OD&D style game. But perhaps we could take that one simple house rule and apply it to all weapons. Now, what this would change at the beginning of the game? Absolutely nothing, except maybe if you're playing, for example, Swords and Wizardry fighters. I would say that for fighters, because it applies to everyone, the fighter still gets combat machine, which means that they can still just eliminate foes as they go up in level, whatnot. No changes there. And I wouldn't change, this is very important, I would not change the hit points of the monsters or the damage that spells do. That all stays the same, because those are outside things. We're just talking about the skill of the character, because as your fighter gets better with that sword, as their chance to hit increases, so too will their ability to deal damage with that sword. But because we're only, especially dealing with a Swords and Wizardry white box style game, because you're only dealing with a d6 or a d6 plus 1 or a d6 minus 1, then their damage is going to go up a bit. It's going to follow the bell curve. Damage will start following the bell curve. And I think it won't be all that overpowering. It's like a second level fighter with a long sword is going to be dealing 2d6 damage. a third level, a third level rogue with a dagger will be dealing 3d6 minus 3 damage because all modifiers still apply. A 7th level fighter with a great sword will be dealing 7d6 plus 7 damage just on the hit dice themselves. And they might have additional bonuses to damage if they have high strength or magic. Those things will also apply. But the magic, so I'm thinking that you could have magic apply per die, or you could simply have magic apply per attack. And since every fighter only really gets one attack, this is it. This is how they become awesome. And you don't necessarily have to apply that damage bonus every round, but you could, because it's one of the things that sets fighters apart. Fighters need to be really good at fighting and or killing their enemies. That's what they do. It's their shtick. Wizards are a toolbox of magical abilities, and you don't have to increase the damage that they deal in order to have them maintain their usefulness. They're still a toolbox. They will always be a toolbox. There will always be uses for all of their spells, even if they are no longer the combat mega powerhouses that they become in later levels. Rogues, similar thing. In fact, actually, in a way, they can become more roguey because they get, a third level rogue would get 3d6. Say they have a sword, all right, regular sword, 3d6 plus 3. Excuse me, I'm assuming they have a +1 bonus to their damage. Maybe they don't, but it's a 3d6. Then they add their sneak attack dice on top of that. So let's say that's another 3d6. Damn, right? That's a lot of damage. Cha. The other part of this is the only thing I would change with the monsters is I would give the monsters the same ability with regards to hit dice. So for however many hit dice the monster has, their attack will deal that many numbers of dice in damage. Now, for those monsters whose attacks already deal multiple dice in damage, you don't multiply the result. At least I wouldn't. I haven't really gamed this out yet. This is still just the thought process. I've been playing it out in my head. I've been playing like duels and combats in my head, but I haven't like sat down with dice and really played out all the angles. So maybe someone else has already tried this and they can explain to me how it's a terrible idea and I should never have thought of it, or they can tell me about how they made it work. And I'm open to either bits of feedback. But the idea here is that monsters that deal multiple dice worth of damage with each attack, they don't necessarily multiply it, they just have a number of dice equal to their level, just like the players. So monsters are still powerful, they're still dangerous, they're still scary, but so are the player characters. So you get your 7th level fighters rolling around with 7d6 damage on their weapons, plus all their bonuses and modifiers. And but they're facing off against 12 hit die dragons. Well, that 12 hit die dragon is going to be rolling 12d6 for damage anytime they land an attack. That becomes scary again. Doesn't matter how powerful your fighter is, they start facing off against a high level dragon, they still have the chance of being knocked down in one hit if the dragon hits them. And so combat could become more swingy in a sense because you're operating on a bell curve, but the bell curve doesn't always apply in the sense that there's always those outliers where you roll all 6s or all 1s. But on average, what it should do is it should eliminate the long slogging combats where the fighters are holding the line. Their real job is just preventing people from getting to the wizard. Thieves and rogues might try to get a sneak attack in if they can get around edgewise, but otherwise they're also kind of just waiting back, standing back and shooting arrows from a distance. The cleric's running around trying to heal people. and maybe throwing around a couple of combat support spells. And the wizard is basically the one you're depending on because they're the only one that has magic that can deal multiple d6s worth of damage to multiple monsters per round, right? That's kind of how a lot of combat goes, unless people have a bunch of magic items, in which case a lot like the fighter can use their necklace of fireballs to cast a spell. But what if that fighter is dealing, 76 damage with their sword? Well, suddenly that fighter, they're not just standing there holding the line. They can advance. They can knock down that first opponent and run up and start hitting down the others. They can start, mowing down the enemies one at a time because they're maybe not using combat machine, but they can really engage the foe. They have a chance to make a true difference. Same with the thief, the rogue. They have a chance to really get in there. They're also going to be weaker to a certain extent because if someone does hit them, they don't have the hit points to survive 76, blows from your average monster, even if it's 76 minus 7. But also keep in mind, even the wizard, let's say the wizard has to, it's a 7th level wizard, the highest level you can achieve in Swordsman Wizardry Continual Light at the moment. They cast their big spells, but they have a monster comes up trying to hit them, okay? Well, instead of like, I don't have anything, oh my gosh, someone save my character and get in there. Like, no, that wizard's going to take their staff and they're going to bonk that monster on the head for 76, minus 7 damage or whatever the damage is for their wizard staff. They don't have the hit points. They still can't take a hit necessarily, but they're not helpless in melee. They still have the ability to protect themselves. And especially if they have some armor to give themselves some kind of magical armor to give themselves a little bit of protection, then they can actually, stand a chance of surviving that assassination run by, the evil bad guys. But so can your evil bad guy NPCs also have a chance of surviving if you try to send your fighter up and get right next to the wizard. Well, their wizard is also going to be able to just bonk even if they're out of spells. And of course, clerics, same thing. Although the cleric actually already does get to wear armor, so they're even going to be even more protected. I feel like this would do two other things that I haven't already discussed. First, the player characters are going to be more deadly. Yes, we've mentioned that. The monsters will be more deadly. Yes, we've mentioned that. But also, it would allow you as the game master to have fewer enemies on the field because you're not playing attrition with your NPCs, with your monsters. You're not playing the attrition game. This isn't a 5th edition style hit point reducing slog. Any combat round could theoretically be the last round. If someone rolls all 6s on their damage dice, there's a lot of damage running around. And even that big old dragon's gonna, kind of be concerned about that. And especially like your big liches. The lich might be able to throw out that big old, spell that's going to reanimate all the dead. But if you can get if your rogue can get one good stab in, then that lich could theoretically, if not go down, at least be reduced by half hit points and have other things happening to them really fast. So I think that would be another cool thing. It reduces attrition. It would shorten combats, I think, by a significant measure. It would allow people to use fewer monsters / NPCs unless you want that battle scene and you want to use a bunch of like 1st and 2nd level monsters in order to kind of emphasize how grand of a spectacle this particular combat is. But you don't have to do that. You could just have a bunch of higher level, higher hit die skeletons and zombies, like not even a bunch of them, just a couple of them, but have them be more meaningful as individual opponents. Now, we could always do that in the past, But this kind of emphasizes that, where each combat could become a duel between equals and not become a slog. Essentially, in my mind, what it would do is it would allow you to maintain the fear and anxiety that people experience during first level play for longer. Now, it would become more tempered with experience and with options and magical items being added to the party's capabilities as time goes on. But that little level of anxiety would never quite go away, because you never know when the enemy is going to land that really good hit. And maybe you can take one or two really good hits, but the third one just might be all it takes to get you down. I think that those effects could potentially be a net positive, especially for a lower magic, more gritty campaign, if that's your goal, especially if you want to do something that's more historical in nature. But yeah, that's the general gist. The general gist, again, to reiterate what the rule is I'm talking about. We simply match the number of dice rolled when a weapon attack hits, ranged or melee, with the level of the PC or the number of hit dice of the monster making the attack. Nothing else has changed. Nothing else is modified, just the number of dice rolled. And I think that this would make a very interesting change in the dynamic of an OSR game, and allow for fighters and rogues and even clerics to be more valid in higher level play than they currently are, while at the same time reducing long, slogging, hit point tax battles. Let me know what you think. That's what I think, and it could be fun, or it could, you could disagree strongly. I would like to know, has anyone tried this? Did it work? Did it not work? Have they tried something similar? Have they seen other games use this idea aside from just backswords and bucklers? I'm curious to know. Excuse me. So yeah, there it is. If you enjoyed this video, please, I would appreciate it if you would like it. Maybe subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, and peace be with you. Bye-bye now.